Hello, welcome to HobbyKing.com. My name is Stuart, and following on from the official flight review of the Gloster Gladiator, something a little bit special now. If you remember from the flight review, I detailed how out of the box it comes without the stickers applied in a base silver, and that's to allow you guys to do your own custom scheme, and that's exactly what we're going to do here today. Now, I'm in my somewhat ad hoc workshop, just to explain, when I work from home, and actually all the product development mostly takes part inside my garage there, which is a little bit messy at the moment, but as we roll forward I'll get that tidied up and have it looking a little bit more like a studio. As the sun is shining and the weather is beautiful, I'm going to open up with this first video outside here in my garden, and it is of course with the Gloster Gladiator. So I've got it here in front of me. This is a brand new one in box, and I've got a Norwegian scheme in mind for this one that uses the base silver in real life, and then it's a relatively straightforward spray job for the Norwegian markings, and I'm going to utilize some of the decals that are supplied with the Gloster Gladiator to make a nice representation of the Norwegian gladiators that served in 1940. So I've got my paints in front of me here. We're going to delve into the box, get it open up, and then I'll talk you through some of the pointers before then going ahead and showing you guys how I do a custom scheme on this, and hopefully that's something you guys can learn from too and apply to your newly purchased Durafly Gloster Gladiators. So without further ado, let's get this box open. Okay, so here we are with all the components laid out on this temporary workbench, and as you can see there's really not much to it, and that's the point with this spray job. It's actually a very simple scheme. The Norwegian scheme is nice and simple, and it's very easy to do with parts from either a local model shop or a local hardware store. So for the Norwegian scheme we're going to be focusing on just spraying the rudder and the top surface of the top wing and the bottom surface of the bottom wing. We're also going to be utilizing some of the decals supplied with the model to give it a scheme very reminiscent of the Norwegian scheme that they used in 1940 there up in Norway flying the Gloster Gladiator. We've got model shop brought Tamiya spray paints and some handcraft paints there as well. Talcum powder. Now talcum powder, why have I got that? Well, Brendan over on Just Plain Crazy had a very good tip for spraying painted foam models using talcum powder. What that does, it stops bleed, and it also stops the paint from lifting up when you lift the masking tape. I'll put underneath this video a link to his video showing that trick because it's very, very worthwhile. I'll be using talcum powder to get the same results here on the Gladiator respray. Other than that, I've just got low tack masking tape, low tack marking tape, and then a clear varnish. Now the point of the clear varnish, not only does it protect the paint job that I'm going to do on here, but also I'm going to do some light weathering. An airframe like this with the panel lines and with the ribbing effect is calling out for some light weathering, and on the silver it really comes to life. So we'll do a little bit of that, and the clear matte varnish will just seal all of that and protect it for many, many years to come. So let's crack on, and first of all what we're going to do, what you should do with all models before you spray them, is just test these paints. Now I know these are acrylic paints, so I'm pretty confident they'll be fine, but I'll show you how and where to test a little bit of spray paint on the Gladiator before you go ahead and spray it. Okay, so I've got the Gladiator laid out in front of me, and what I want to cover first is the testing of the paints. Again, these are the main paints I'm going to be using. This is the Tamiya acrylic spray, and then a standard hardware store brought clear matte varnish, also acrylic. You do want to test those on the foam before you start, so the only place you can really do it with the Gladiator is this part here on the tail. So what you first of all do, you push this in, and you want to just mark your test area. So that's approximately the area that will be covered by the fuselage. So now if I just push that push rod back, make a little line with a pencil, and then you can see from that, if I wiggle that out, if you can see that on camera. So you've got this, here you go, you can see now my pencil mark, so you've got this area to play with because this is painted foam. So anything you spray on here should precisely match what goes on the model in terms of reaction. I've already done that myself with the other side, and you can see this is the red that I sprayed, and then I sprayed the varnish too, and it had no effect on the paint whatsoever. So now we have confirmed that the paints and varnishes don't affect the foam. That's great. I can go ahead and start masking and spraying. This is done with the talcum powder trick. You can see from the footage here what I did. I basically got a rag and I covered that in talcum powder and then rubbed that onto the wing, just exactly as Brennan showed in Just Playing Crazy's video. Again, link to that underneath. The painter's tape is now applied, and this is the packing material that came with the Gladiator. I'm using that as well to help protect the rest of the foam from paint. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off, this is the top wing, I'm going to finish off the bottom wing, and then for the rudder, what I'm actually going to do to match the Norwegian scheme that I've got in mind, I'm just going to remove the rudder completely and spray that fully red as one, and then rehinge it later. We'll show you a little bit of that later on. Okay, so whilst the red on the wing is drying in the background, I'm going to move on to removing the rudder. Again, the Gladiator in the Norwegian scheme has an all red rudder with the blue and white stripe. So the simplest thing to do is just to unscrew, if you can see there, the ball link, which I will do now. And then with that out, you'll be able to more easily cut the hinge line. So let's take that out, put that aside so we don't lose it. Okay, so here's the hinge line. Important thing to note, there is one small plastic pin hinge here, and what we're going to do when we reinstall this is we're going to try and use that original pin hinge there, and then we've got the same size HobbyKing small pin hinges, and I'll put one here and one here at the top. Let's cut the rudder away now. So just go down you can trim it later, so you just go down the center of the hinge line. Doesn't need to be necessarily perfect because you can trim it off later. And then for the pin hinge, you just need to twist the rudder a little bit like so, and then that should, there we go, pop off like that. So that pin hinge there, we're going to have to put two more here to complete that rehinging. Other thing to note, you'll see on some models you may receive have got this flashing mold leftovers basically in the mold. What you can do now if you're painting the rudder like I am, it's a good opportunity to shave that off and give it a light sanding just to make that nice and smooth. And it's the same for the hinge line here. You want to sand away that excess so it's nice and smooth. Now we'll get on and do the rudder. Okay, so we have the red on now, and you can see made very good use of the packing material that came. There's the tape, and it's only loosely on that top part. Use the talcum powder, that should peel off nicely, and then underneath that is red either side of the white, which is again how the Norwegian scheme was done. So now it's time to put the white on. Then once the white is on, then I'll take the tape off, and then we'll mask on the little blue line in the middle, which is again the Norwegian markings. So let's go ahead, spray some white. Okay, so now it's time for what I always find one of the most exciting parts of a spray job, peeling off the tape. All this packing material has really done its job to keep the overspray off of the rest of the model. Now we're going to go ahead and reveal if that talcum powder trick did the works, and we've got a nice fine line. Then after that we'll then mask to put the blue pinstripe on. Okay, so here we go. Hopefully you guys can see that well enough. I'll start by taking the outer part off. Always when I'm pulling tape off, I'd never pull up, I always pull along like this. just like that. So this is the first part, that's the easy part. The next part will be taking this part off. So let's see how we did. Okay, there's the paint line, and I want to pull gently. Careful on the edges. Keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling. A little bit of bleed, I can tidy that up. More importantly, the paint's not lifting. And then, come on, slowly, slowly. Catchy monkey. Alright. Whew, there's the first line. Now go ahead and do the rest of it. Okay, so this one's off. Now, it's not bad. There is a little bit of bleed and a little bit of the red has come off. I don't know if you can just see that there. On the other wing, I haven't taken the red border off yet, but what you can see is that I've got some of the red paint that is lifted up. So I will just quickly get a bit of card and hold a mask over the white, and then just quickly give that a once over with some red, and then take that off, and then it's time for the blue stripe. Also, you'll notice, especially here, you can see there in the light there's a difference in the finish, but once that's weathered and then all varnished, that will all look completely as one. So it might not look great now, but where is it? Might not look great now, but it is going to look great when I finish. So come back in a little while, and I'll show you how it looks as the finished product. Alright, the day is progressing, and so is the paint job. Let's have a look where we are now. So I'm sure everyone else recognises a messy workbench once you start getting towards the end of a project. Well, we're getting there, definitely. As you see, I've been doing some tests with the blue. That's all been masked off now. There was a little bit of tidying up to do with some overspray and whatnot on the red and white. So now I'm masked to do the blue, which is exactly what I'm going to do now. Here's one ready for spraying. And then at that point, once the actual markings are on, the insignias, then I can go about weathering it and building the Gladiator. Okay, so here it is all laid out in front of me, and the painting is done. The masking tape trick with the talcum powder worked out really rather well. There was some lifting, but with a little bit of patience and a paintbrush I was able to fix that up, and yeah, I'm very pleased with the results. The good thing, however, if there are any imperfections, you know what, it's very reflective of the full size, because what you've got to remember, when these schemes were applied during wartime, they were not perfect like you see in museums nowadays. So if they're a little bit rough around the edges, that's actually okay. That, as scale modelers, that gives us a little bit of leeway in that sense. So for the next task, it's actually weathering. I'm going to show you some very light weathering tips. It's certainly not going to be to the level that you saw the Iron Maiden Spitfire recently on our channel here. Great job they did there. This is going to be just some light weathering using basic materials from your house or from a local model shop, just to bring out the already gorgeous panel lines and rib lines and former lines that are molded directly into the foam, because out of the box it comes pretty shiny as you see it here, but to really breathe life into it and give it a whole new dimension, just some very light weathering can make it look that much better. So I'm gonna start doing some right away on the wings, and then we'll come back in a little while and I'll go through some weathering on the fuselage and how that makes a difference. Also to note, the rudder is done, and these are obviously it's been painted. I removed it, and I have rehinged now. This is the original hinge at the bottom, 2 new pin hinges at the top. These are the HobbyKing hinges, and you might notice a slight difference in finish. That's because this was a matte and this was a semi-gloss paint, because that's all I could get at the time. They are the same colour, just different finish. The benefit though of once we've weathered is that we're going to seal everything with a clear satin varnish, and that's an acrylic water-based varnish from a spray can. What that does, that just flattens everything to a nice uniform finish, so you won't see any of that. It also protects the paint, and it also protects the light weathering we're going to do. that is why I've now got the cockpit masked up, because obviously the clear windows on that I don't want to varnish, so they've been masked off and it's ready to go. So some basic weathering on the wings, then I'll come back and show you how I've done that on the fuselage, show you a before and after if you like, and then after that it's just really the assembly, and then for part 2 we do the flying. So let's get on with some basic weathering. Alright, so here we go, and we are back. And what I wanted to do before I got onto the fuselage, you can see is very pristine, is just show you the difference. The light is a little faded here, but I think you can probably pick it out. Of course, you see that the bottom wing, the top wing here has not been weathered, whereas the bottom side of the bottom wing has, and I think it's really quite clear to see the difference. Let's go a little closer. You see the faux flaps here. This is the one side of the wing that hasn't been weathered. This is the other wing that has been. It's quite subtle, but it really brings out those details, as you can see there, those rib lines and everything there. Now, the technique that I use, it's very simple. There's two ways you can do it, but basically what you need is a load of black powder like this, and I've used this Valio pigment, which is basically just a black powder available from all good model shops. But if you can't get that, you can also use a piece of sandpaper and a pencil, and just sand away the pencil lead, and then you've got the same effect. Now, the trick here is with these rib lines, you can see it, but okay, so it's the next morning now. The light is a little better, and hopefully you can see some of the effects of the weathering. Again, it's just using this weathering powder, but you can of course just use charcoal ground up, or use a pencil with some sandpaper to give you the same black dust effect. And this dry rubbing technique actually works very, very well. So you can see here I've gone along every rib and along the leading edge and trailing edges of the faux flaps and the ailerons here, and you can tell that this wing hasn't been weathered and this wing has. You can see that it really does make a difference, and I'm going to just show you now the technique, a very, very simple technique that I use to weather both the wing, and then we'll go on to the fuselage, because on the fuselage, on this side, I've already done some weathering. If I hold it up here, see this side has been lightly weathered. You can see that bit. If I turn it over, you can see, lay that down, you can see that this wing side is completely as it is out of the box. Okay, so I've got the clean wing in front of me here. Now, here is one of the ribs molded in, and very simply, I take these. These are makeup sponges, available, very, very cheap from a pound store or a dollar store, something like that. And with this edge, I just dab it into the powder there, as you can see. Get it really, really covered, and then running along the rib, I want the ruler just offset from the rib, so the tip of the sponge can be on the rib, and I apply some gentle pressure, one moment, and swipe it in that direction. Now that leaves a mark like that, which doesn't look so good at the moment, but then with the cleaner one, I just rub in the direction of the wind, and there, it's very subtle, but you can see that there's a bit of effect. So if it's not quite good enough, then just push with a little more pressure, and then wipe off again. You can just about see now that's left a little bit of a weathering mark, and it's highlighted that rib molded in there. Always brush in the direction of wing, in the direction of the wind, gives that full scale effect. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of the wing, and then we'll show you the fuselage. Okay, so I just quickly did this other side. Now, the effect of the weathering, I think you can pick it up there, is quite subtle. I quite like it, but I did a little bit heavy here. So what you can do is get a wet piece of kitchen towel like this, and because this is just powder, it very easily wipes off a bit, and it just lessens the weathering effect. So let's hope you can see that on camera. So I'm just going to wipe again in the direction of the wind, just to make that weathering a little bit lighter. Because I'm only looking for a somewhat subtle effect. So let's see. You can see quite a lot came off there. Now if you look at the wing, it still has a weathered effect. And now it's time to do the underside, and then the fuselage. So that's the wing. Now it's onto the fuselage. It's a slightly different technique, and I use slightly different tools. Still dry rubbing. Still got the black powder, if you like. Now I'm gonna still use the sponge, but I'm gonna also use a earbud. I forget the American term, but earbud. But also, this is a foam painting block that kids use for painting. Again, you can get them at the dollar store or the pound store or euro store or whatever. And the reason I'm using this is that it's got a finer point here, so it's really good for getting the tip coloured like that, and then working into the panel lines. And that's exactly what I've done here. You can see when I turn it over the difference, but I've gone through the panel lines, and I've also brushed from behind the engine here. If I move that back a bit, because there would have been in real life a lot of oil and exhaust coming from behind there. And then towards this end, if I bring it forward, you can see I've done the same technique that I've done along the wing, which is just running along the lines of the longerons, or the ribs, or the longerons in this case, just to bring them out a bit more. And if I zoom out just a fraction, there we go. This is obviously a weathered side. Hopefully you can see that there. And if I turn it over, this is how it comes out of the box. So what you should be seeing there, hopefully if it picks up on camera, is just a nice subtle difference. So brand new, and then ever so slightly weathered. You can see those panel lines really coming out now, which is exactly what we want. Also a little bit of weathering, just same technique, scuffing around the cowl. So let me give you a demonstration. Okay, so well, I've got this blister here, the gun blister. I'm going to take some of the powder in a cotton wool bud, or earbud as you like. And I'm actually going to, again, always going with the flow of wind, and just go around that like so. And then do a little trail off, and give a little bit on the leading edge there, a little bit around there. And then again with my sponge, just wipe it off. Now, it's subtle, but it's there. There is a difference. So that's pretty much all I'm doing for that. And then for the panel lines, with my more angled foam tip, I go in the panel lines, apply a little bit of pressure, and just work my way along. Top up the brush, do it in this direction too. Always try and stay on the rearward side of the panel line, because again, that's how the dirt would be distributed in real life with the plane going forward. And you can also, with this same straight brush, just give it a little stroke back like that, like so. And now I'll do a little bit in there. Hopefully this is picking up for you guys. A little bit of force, a little bit here too, and a little bit here, a little bit of force, that you can see that quite well. And now if we go over with the cleaner sponge, again in the direction of the wind, like so, what you should start to see is just some nice subtle detailing coming out now. And well, I'm going to go over the entire airframe now, and then we'll be done. So join me back in a minute. Okay, so one final tip now. The fuselage is basically weathered, so I'm quite happy with that. Now the brown ring around the front, I think on the full size that was a bronze or a copper or brass, but it was a different kind of material, metal material on the full size, and so it had, being metal, it had a metallic look to it. If you look at pictures of the full size, it comes out out the box from Durafly as like a satin, just all around brown. And to give it a bit of a metallic effect, what I'm going to do is a similar technique of dry brushing. This time I've got some Tamiya copper paint, and I'm just going to load some up on a stick, spread it along the stick, and use the same sponge just to get that really soaked in. And then I just wipe off the excess because I don't want too much on there, and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so hopefully you can see the cowl there. Now with my sponge loaded up, I just want to, again in the direction of the wind. Oh, this one's already gone dry, so I need to load that up again. So with my sponge loaded up, like so, just wipe off the excess a bit, and then just a little bit of gentle pressure, and just take it like so. Now, it's quite warm out here, so it dries rather quickly, but it gives a very subtle metallic effect. I think you just about see it. Turn it over. You can see I've already done the other side there, and then when that's dirtied up as well, that should look really good. Okay, so that concludes the part 1 of this ModTech Monday for the Durafly Gloster Gladiator weathering and custom paint scheme on the newly released Durafly Gloster Gladiator. In part 2, when we come back, you are going to see it all finely weathered, varnished, and all rigged in assembly. Because once I've finished off the bronzing, if you like, around the cowl, then it's just really the assembly and a little bit of final weathering. So you'll see that in part 2, the full reveal, and then of course a quick flight on the Norwegian scheme Durafly Gloster Gladiator. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you next time here on HobbyKing.com.